There seems to be an awful lot of sad stories in the news today, and there are thousands missing. Does anybody care? We built a channel where we talk about those faces. Talking News with Debbie. Cassie Barnes has still not been found, and it's been 2 years since her case first hit the spotlight. Breaking. Chattanooga and Middle Valley both behind bars. Sarah Galloway was found. She wasn't found alive. What happened to Sarah Galloway?
It's too heartbreaking to share.
Children are still missing. Children like Dorsey. You're in shame. You just got away with it. Welcome to Talking News. Hello everyone. My name is Debbie. We use big stories to push little faces.
Hello everyone, welcome to Chasing a Murderer Talking News. Before we get started, I would like to ask you, if you enjoy watching these videos, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe because that helps the channel out. And also hit the notification bell if you would like notifications whenever we have new uploads. So guys, I've been really struggling to get videos out and kind of throwing them together lately. Breaking news is not an easy channel to run. It really isn't. And so that's why you see a lot of these little savvy techs kind of going live with these stories, because it's just so much easier. Just giving breaking news tidbits. It's much easier, but I have a problem with that because I always like to do the details. Sometimes I don't have time to do them all, but at least I try to collect them and do the video later. Sometimes I just have tons of information sitting in my notebooks that I haven't shared with you guys yet. We have so many of these stories, just one after another, and it's just touching so many. We have women, men, children from all cultures and from all over the world. In fact, there was just one coming out of Australia that ended up being, well, it was a happy ending for once. But right now, I've been covering this story attached to Heidi Planck, which she's a woman from California. A lot of people believe that she went missing on October 17th after attending her son's football game after looking Nancy. And she was reported missing October 20th. This story is quite interesting when you see the world that is around her, so the people in her life every day. So let's go ahead and get started. I want to remind you guys that I don't have a mic right now, and so the environmental changes might be a bit extreme. And also, I keep forgetting, there's a lot of people asking, they want to donate to help this channel keep going, which I don't mention very often. You can go to my Patreon page, Chasing a Murderer, and you don't even have to really do a monthly thing, or you can just donate once. That's what I use the Patreon for, is for people to be able to donate and help this channel keep going. And let me tell you guys, it takes a lot of work when you're doing it all completely alone to keep up with so many stories, because I don't just tell stories. I also research other cases and keep track of those, and I'm trying to put puzzles together on the side. One of my main concerns that I don't mention often is well, you know, sex trafficking is a big deal, yes, but there's something bigger going on, and it has to do with children. I've been looking into that off and on for about a year. So it has to do with organs. It's completely, this type of activity is just shocking, unbelievable. Just cannot believe that there is a human being on this earth that is willing to pick money over life. The brotherhood of humanity is really just falling apart. And it's so shocking to see so many people in this world that think money and status is more important than human life. Speaking about that, let's get back to Heidi Planck. The 39-year-old California mother with a 10-year-old son by the name of Bond And right now it seems like her ex-husband, Jim Wayne, is her advocate. But before we get started, let's learn a little bit about her ex-husband and her boss. Jim Wayne is a hairdresser in the Beverly Hills, California area. He says that his ex-wife Heidi doesn't have a college degree or any accounting license, but she's making really good money as a bookkeeper, earning about $125,000 a year. She also makes up to $1,500 a month in bonuses. She has been employed at Cayman Capital Partners, LLC, for about 5 years. Jim says that Heidi started off as her boss's personal assistant and worked her way up to bookkeeper. And you need to know who her boss is. So the man's name is Jason Sugarman, and this man has some connections. Heidi's ex-husband realizes that she most likely knows where the bones are buried in this company. And now that his ex-wife is missing, Jim believes this whole thing stinks. Something isn't right. And he says he can't put his finger on it. So let's go back to 2019 a little bit and understand that Camden Capital executive Jason Sugarman and his partner Galanis were investigated for security fraud. In fact, Galanis actually ended up going to jail. In fact, the SEC in 2019 charged Camden Capital executive Jason Sugarman and his business partner in securities fraud, and the pair had developed a scheme to steal $43 million from its clients. This had to deal with Native American tribal bonds. Jason Sugarman ultimately siphoned about $9 million in cash for his direct and personal benefit, one article says. While Jason didn't seem to serve any jail time for these multiple scams, well, his partner did. He will spend 189 months in prison for his participation in this multiple fraudulent scam. So really, there's about a book on Jason Sugarman, Heidi's boss. But Jason is a minority owner on a popular Los Angeles football club. He's also the son-in-law of a Hollywood mogul, Peter Guber. So back in June 26, Jason has multiple violations of security laws in the civil complaint that seeks to fine him and recoup that $9 million. I mean, for example, Mark Stevens, a billionaire venture capitalist and minority owner of the Golden State Warriors, was fined $500,000 and banned from the NBA activities because he was captured on television shoving a Toronto Raptors player on the sidelines during the NBA Finals game. Let's not forget about Robert Kraft, who was facing misdemeanor charges that he paid for sex at a Florida massage parlor. And one reporter actually summed it up that Jason Sugarman is basically this kind of guy, but is basically keeping a low profile in this glitzy ownership group. It says that they paid a league record of about $110 million expansion fee in 2014, and that was to replace the disbanded Chivas USA as the second MLS team in South California. And so there's a very close group of people here and big names also attached to these type of groups, which is Magic Johnson, Mia Hamm, and the group is led by Larry Berg. And if you can't tell, I'm struggling with this because sports is my least. I have no interest in that. But you can believe that there are some very sketchy organizations up there dealing with these sports in all categories. Interesting enough, Guber, and I hope I say that right, who produced several hit movies, is now chairman of Mandalay Entertainment. He's also the team's executive chairman. And right now, he's having to deal with a bunch of journalists who are interested in finding out more about his background. So this guy, Jason Sugarman, documents say that he's basically invested in worthless securities and that he's benefiting immensely from the scheme. And to a large extent, he was the biggest winner from the fraud. Well, the fraud that they were looking into, because Jason ends up with voting control over the corporate assets that were acquired with the bond proceeds. It's not just the $9 million in cash. And everyone knows if you're in business like this, there's going to be some shady deals and there's going to be some schemes. And I will tell you, I have looked on Jason's Twitter, and he is definitely into this leadership stuff and seems to show a little bit of a bond or a little deal with a Republican senator like Lindsey Graham from South Carolina. He likes to talk big, but if you look at his Twitter, there's not that much interest in him per se. He also likes to be an example of a fearless leader. So now that I've given you a quick cap on Jason Sugarman, who is Heidi and where is she? So Heidi, we know that she works for her boss, Jason Sugarman, who has been actually dealing with a few problems dealing with bonds, securities, and his business. Around October 11th, it is said that Heidi calls her boyfriend. You're going to be interested in who he is. She's dating Naheem Salim, 43. And Naheem actually works for the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. He claims that he's the vice president for operations. I took a quick glance of Chan Zuckerberg, the initiative websites, and didn't find much on him. But this is considered to be a big deal, so this is a big deal job. Later on, Heidi's ex-husband, Jim, says that this guy seems like a really good guy. However, he does mention that when Heidi talked to Salim, they were having an argument. And so what is this argument over? Well, they were quarreling over the fact Naheem wasn't traveling down to Los Angeles to be with Heidi. Jim said that Naheem was feeling obligated to remain up north. Naheem lives in San Francisco, which is only about a 5-hour drive. The reason Naheem could not come down to visit Heidi was he had to deal with work. We find out after Heidi went missing, she has a cousin that comes forward and he goes by Trey. He says, "We are all definitely worried about her. Clearly something is going on." And a few days before she disappears, about around the same time that she's talking to her boyfriend, she has intentions on coming up Thanksgiving to spend time with her family. She talks to her aunt and tells them that she plans on coming to see them all. And during those chats, there just didn't seem to be any kind of indication that anything was wrong. Heidi was making plans for the future. She had plans to visit her family for Thanksgiving. And not only that, her son's birthday was coming up. So for anyone who is thinking maybe there's a possibility that she ran away, well, the person that's going to run away usually don't make future plans, especially future plans with family if they're not going to be there. Heidi's cousin Trey describes her as she is a very loving and generous person. She's an all-around good person. So there, we have an idea who Heidi is and who she's working for. And we know before we get to October 17th, the last day she's seen, that she's talking with family, making plans. She has a very sketchy boss. And then she's having an argument with her new boyfriend. So we know now that Heidi Planck is working as a controller and executive assistant for an investment advisory company called Camden Capital Partners LLC, which is under investigation by the SEC. On October 17th, 2021, A security footage actually captured Heidi leaving her home at the 2800 block of Gardendale Street in Downey, Los Angeles, guys. She has with her a beverage, a small purse, and her dog by the name of Seven. She doesn't appear to be upset. She doesn't seem to be prepared for going on any type of a big trip. We don't see a phone. Could be in her purse, I guess. And she jumps into her gray Range Rover and heads to her son's game. We hear later that she actually left behind her phone and computer at her apartment or house. So if that's true, that's important to note, because when she arrives to her son's game, Jim says that she appears to be antsy for some reason, and that she would sit by them for a little while and then she would move to a different spot. But we know she has her dog with her, possibly doesn't have her phone. She leaves it at home. So what is she antsy about? In case I forgot to mention it, Jim and Heidi actually share 50-50 custody of their son. And I never did hear who was with Wayne besides Heidi that day. So for me, for her to be antsy that day didn't make sense. She has her dog. Everything just seems fine. Then suddenly, according to her ex-husband Jim, she abruptly leaves the game at halftime. And so I haven't had time to look at the mileage exactly, but I believe, it's between everything that's going to play out here from here on is going to be within 5 to 16 miles where the dog is found, where it was last seen. Because after this, Heidi goes missing, and the dog is found at 1201 South Hope Street, alone. But I'll go into that in just a little bit. On October 20th, Jim said he actually reached out to his ex-wife a few times with no response, but this is what really made him worry. On this day, he takes his son to a private school, and Heidi doesn't show up to pick her son up. This is interesting to me, because you would think, since you're depending on your ex-wife to pick him up, you would want to make sure that she knows to pick him up. And with the little bit of information we know about this timeline and this time anyways, is he doesn't have communication with her. And so, suspecting that she's going to pick up the son with no communication, is this something they do on a regular basis? Well, he says not really, because they stay in contact all the time. So that was interesting to me. Why would he expect her to pick up the son if he's had no contact with her? So we know Heidi did not pick up her son. And so this was an alert for Jim Wayne. And immediately he says he calls the police, or goes to the police. He takes his son with him and asks for a wellness check for his ex-wife, Heidi Planck. It's never mentioned how Jim gets into Heidi's home, but he does. And he discovers that her phone and computer were left behind. And there's no sign of Heidi. Her car is still missing, and so is her dog. And again, Jim explains that he is acting as the lead contact for police. Jim says that the couple was actually married a few years, and they had actually been together for 4 years. And they actually have been divorced 9 years at this point. So I've not been able to do much of a background check on them yet, but so far it appears that this relationship between Jim and Heidi, they're able to be civil to one another, and they seem to parent together as a team. And at this point, no flags really stand out, except for this. When he said that Heidi and himself spoke or text every day. And he said that his ex-wife, she's a devoted mother who would never ever leave her son. And Heidi's friends later had something to say as well. They say that Heidi was an attentive mother, and when she didn't pick up her son at school later, they immediately were concerned. They said, quote, "When she didn't show up to pick up on Wednesday, we knew something was wrong," end quote. And Jim said, quote, "For him not to hear from his mother this long, something was seriously wrong," end quote. Let's jump back to October 19th, 2021. We know at this point Heidi has not contacted Jim. We know that her car was not in the driveway because of her security cam. But someone shows up at her door just out of the blue. And it's Jason Sugarman. It appeared that he was knocking on the door. He didn't get an answer. And he just dropped off muffins. So not only is he an adventurous leader, he apparently likes to stop by his employee's house and drop off muffins just out of the blue. He must have knew at that point she wasn't answering texts most likely, because she's not answering the text for Jim or her son. And at this point, no one really even realizes what's really going on. At least that's what Jim says. And Heidi's new boyfriend seems to think that she's just ghosting him. So it seems that she's not texting him back either. So it's important to note that Jason seems to have a common interest, so much so in Heidi that he's gone by her house and dropped off muffins. This is something different from what Jim will say in just a little bit. And this is where things become even more interesting, okay? According to Jim, he's getting strange phone calls, and they have to do with his wife's work. Excuse me, guys, his ex-wife's boss, Jason Sugarman. The very same people who are investigating Jason call, this is strange, Heidi's ex-husband inquiring about her boss, Jason Sugarman. Meanwhile, sometime in this time frame, Jim has inquired his ex-wife's phone, and he somehow is able to get into it, and he sees a text message about Heidi's dog, Seven. And so we're going to kind of jump back and forth here a little bit. So Heidi's missing. No one's seen her. But now there's a message saying that her dog's been located. It seems that, we'll go over the apartments in just a minute, but the dog was found roaming the 28th floor of a luxury apartment alone. And the couple had actually taken care of this dog at least 5 days, they said a week, as they continued to try to contact the owner of this dog, but they failed. They could not get a hold of Heidi at all. So another interesting note is the fact that while Heidi's son is trying to get a hold of his mom, his dad says he's not worried at the time. He thought maybe perhaps Heidi might have been busy. And he says later in articles that she is the type of mother who texts and calls her son every night without fail. And even though Heidi and her boyfriend had an argument, he thought perhaps maybe they had a last minute visit. So Jim says he starts to get quite worried. And here's the second version of what happened after he realized something might be wrong with Heidi. He says once he realized something was wrong, he took his son and they both went to the LAPD and filed a missing persons report. So I'm not certain if this is something he done after the welfare check or what's going on with that. Like I said, without some kind of statements, affidavits, it's kind of difficult to put these things in order. He finds out that the police are not able to locate her cell phone because it's been turned off. Not only that, they couldn't locate her car because the GPS system in her Range Rover was never set up. According to a few witnesses and articles, Seven, Heidi's dog, was actually found, what they're kind of guessing, 3 hours after I guess she went to the game, or they suspected that she was missing. And there was a couple that lived in that apartment block. They said that they looked after the dog for a week as they were unable to get in touch with the owner. And it was actually Jim Wayne, Heidi's ex-husband, that tracked them down. So here we have a dog that got into a very high secured apartment complex, a luxury apartment complex on the 28th floor somehow. And so a lot of people are trying to figure out, how did that happen? I mean, did a dog just happen to wander through the front doors, which need a key card, into the elevator and go into the 28th floor without a key card? Maybe Heidi had actually gone into the place herself with the dog, went up to the 28th floor, or at least somewhere there, and people are suspecting maybe she had an altercation and something happened suddenly and then the dog was left behind. So there's several speculation stories going around about how the dog got to those on that 28th floor. So here's the problem. They look for Heidi's car. The car's not located there. They check out the garage, they check around the building. No signs of Heidi Planck. And Jim says that there's no reason that they are aware of anyways for her to be there. The mysteries start to pile up. So the owner of this apartment building in downtown Los Angeles refused to cooperate with the police, and investigators wouldn't turn over security footage. And so this is around October 22nd. Police end up having to get a warrant in order to get that video. And once the warrant is issued later, they actually start to cooperate somewhat. Hopefully they're going to find out how her dog, the Bernedoodle, was found on the 28th floor. Maybe there's going to be some kind of clue or tip. For some reason, they mentioned the fact that this high-rise is located about 200 yards away from the Staples Center home of the Los Angeles Lakers and Clippers. Maybe the person covering that news article believed that she took her dog to get it clipped, which doesn't make sense either. Again, how did this dog pass through the front door of this building? How did no one see this dog? Did someone let him in through the doors thinking that he belonged to someone in the building? Again, you need a key card to get through the doors. And how did this dog take an elevator all the way to the 28th floor? Daily Mail said that they actually reached out to the Omni group seeking a comment, but so far they've yet to really reply. And the investigators are still trying to figure out why and how this dog was just wandering around this luxury apartment complex. And how is it that no one knows where Heidi is? Had Heidi been there earlier? Because no one was really searching for Heidi until after October 20th. And once they discovered the dog was there, well, there's plenty of time to move a car if there was something fishy going on. It doesn't seem that Heidi left the dog with a babysitter for her to go visit her boyfriend, because the residents taking care of it didn't know the dog. And Jim Wayne has something to say about that. He says, are insisting that no one has any idea how the dog got there or if Heidi ever had any type of ties to the building. Now remember, Heidi's boss later was found on her security footage from her home that her boss, Jason Sugarman, had actually stopped by her house, ringed the doorbell, and had something in his hands, some speculating that it was muffins. Here we are around October 21st, and phone calls are coming in to Jim Wayne. The first phone call is from SEC, and they seem to have some interest in Jason Sugarman, Heidi's boss. They asked Jim if he knew anything about them and what he thought about Jason. It was shortly after that he's contacted again by Jason Sugarman's assistant. and Jason is actually in the background during that phone call, according to Jim. So this timeline's still a little bit sketchy right now, but he said he's speaking to this assistant, and it didn't appear that the workplace seemed too concerned about the fact he couldn't get a hold of Heidi and didn't know where she was. He could hear Jason Sugarman in the background. He was worried about the computer and claimed that Sugarman seemed to be more interested in making sure that the work computer was returned to her work instead of her whereabouts. So a light's going off in his head at this point, because he's on the phone and he can hear him say, quote, "Make sure he knows I want my laptop," end quote. So let's analyze this. So he's telling them that Heidi's missing. Obviously, this boss doesn't seem to have any worries other than the fact that he probably knows she's missing if he's asking for the laptop. Or maybe he knows the police are called and he's worried about the police looking into the laptop, but doesn't really know what's going on. No matter how you see it, something seems fishy. Because the way Jim sees this is the fact that he doesn't seem to have any concern that his ex-wife is missing. And he's already dealing with a multi-million-dollar company and investigators and frauds and... My gosh, guys. There's a lot going on with this guy. The fact that he has a multi-million-dollar company, he doesn't even offer to help set up a reward for Heidi. He doesn't want to hire a private investigator. He doesn't offer anything to Jim. Because just a few days ago, he was bringing muffins over to his employee's house. Does he care or doesn't he care? During one of those conversations with Jason's assistant, Jim Wayne says that they were blaming Heidi Planck, or accusing her of siphoning off money from the company. And not long ago, Heidi had mentioned that she noticed that her name was over on a lot of paperwork that she didn't suspect should be there. Allegedly anyways, because like I said, there's no affidavit, there's no documents to really back all this up yet. Maybe Jim's right. Things do look quite suspicious when it comes to her employer. So Heidi goes missing. What they're thinking is October 17th. They file a missing persons report October 20th. And October 21st through the 23rd, we're thinking he's talking on and off with this company. They're blaming her for siphoning off money from the company. And Jim says that he doesn't hand over the computer to Jason. He hands it over to the police. So for anyone that might suspect it might have been Jim that played a role in this, while he's the one cooperating 100% with police, he's handing everything over, no questions asked. Heidi's new boyfriend's kind of just not there. So that's kind of, we don't know what's going on with that. Doesn't seem to care that much. At least what we know right now. And then you have Jason Sugarman, who absolutely only cares about getting this computer. This is almost like the movie or the game Clue. One thing's for certain. Is Heidi's ex-husband Jim? He says it's pretty low for Jason and his minions to accuse Heidi of basically embezzling when she mysteriously disappeared. Not only that, the cops have her phone. They're accessing a lot of information, including her bank statements, and they know what's in the bank. And we're not certain, but police do let him know that if she's siphoning money, well, it's not showing on her bank account, because it seems like her bank account is a little bit low. So this is allegedly, guys. Most of this is all allegedly and speculating, because we really don't have affidavits. So if this is true, the fact that they're blaming her when she's missing for siphoning off money is a red flag. And then something Jim says that's interesting, at least I couldn't find information on this. He added that he has no idea how her employer had obtained her banking account information. He also speaks to Dateline and Daily Mail and tells them, I don't know how the assistant of Jason got his name. Don't know how she got his number. But they called him and started just asking him questions. And several times Jim has said that something is dirty going on with that company. And he feels that there's a chance, a big chance, that they have something to do with his ex-wife's disappearance. And one of the biggest clues that they have right now is the fact that the dog was found at a certain area. How did it get there? Hopefully they'll be able to pull some security footage because they seem to be a high security building. From there they can figure out how the dog got there. And that is what most of us are waiting on right now to see what the next step is. In my opinion, if Jim is correct and Jason is part of this, in my opinion, he seems to have some pretty high contacts. He seems to feel, if this is true what he's saying, according to Jim, that he's a bit untouchable. He's not worried about much. Could be several reasons for that, is he has nothing to be worried about, or he has good connections. But it could be someone altogether, and this is just coincidence that he's acting, worried about this computer. I mean, he is under an investigation, and that computer might have a lot of stuff in it that can hurt him. So I guess in time we will learn the truth when it comes to this case. Hopefully Heidi is alive and okay. But we've all seen these stories multiple times, and a lot of times these kind of stories just don't go well. The main thing that really triggered Jim is the fact that, probably made him feel really certain that something was wrong was when she didn't show up for her son's birthday. It wasn't that long ago. Not only that, October 24th, federal agents and robbery homicide detectives from the LAPD enter Heidi's home, and they had their guns drawn. A lot of people wonder what that is about, especially since the guns are drawn and she's not supposed to be there. Some say it's just protocol when they feel that they're walking into a crime scene. And since Heidi has gone missing, Jim has done a lot to help find his ex-wife. He's even picked up her dog from the people that were taking care of it. Their son, Bond, had his 11th birthday without his mother, and friends and family continue to search without any success for Heidi Planck. I didn't get an exact date of when he dropped these muffins off at Heidi's home, but they're saying it was 2 days before she disappeared, so I'm not sure if they're talking about before the 17th or before the 20th. And some people are saying that there is new evidence to show that Heidi was at this apartment complex just 2 to 3 hours before the dog was found. If that's true, I feel pretty certain that the police should be able to pick up something and find out at least a tip or a direction to go. And now Jim is saying that he needs to get sole custody of his son in order to get him into therapy immediately, because the boy is really having a difficult time dealing with this. So that's pretty interesting. And here comes the twist. He took Heidi's laptop and phone and kept it a week before turning it in to the police. He was once quick to talk to media, but now is kind of shutting them down. So Heidi has some very questionable people surrounding her. The investigators will have their hands full with this one, because Jim Wayne is correct. Something isn't right. And who is involved? Because it's somebody that knows her. And why was she antsy at a football game? It didn't make sense to me. This whole entire thing doesn't make sense. And the one person I do feel sorry for, and I believe is a true story, is Bond. Her son is going through hell with this. And Jim knows an awful lot about what is going on with her boss, the dog, everything. So it'll be interesting to learn later how deep this relationship actually went and who is actually involved, because seriously, I mean, you can find reasons in each and every relationship that she has. Find a possible reason that maybe they might have been involved when maybe they're not, but it's there. I mean, you have all these strange little connections going on. Make sure, guys, you drop your ideas down in the comment. Meanwhile, share her picture, share her story. Hopefully someone will find her car. At least we need to know where her car is if we can't find her. For all we know, she could have gotten an accident, left her dog there, which doesn't make sense that she would leave it in the hallway. But you know, you got to look at every aspect. And let's not forget, we still have Donita Wilkerson missing. Make sure you check out her story here on this channel. Alright guys, for now I'm going to go ahead and close out. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.